A lot of people want to start the carnivore diet, but they get intimidated by what they think are all the requirements of the carnivore diet. And it's not the eat mostly red meat thing, or it's eat the beef, butter, bacon, eggs with a bunch of salt thing that usually gets people. It's all the other things. It may be intimidating for an outsider looking in when they spend a lot of time in social media groups watching videos like this about how to start a carnivore diet and how to do it properly, and they get a lot of weird information. And it's because, at the end of the day, the more you learn about just how nasty the food system is, and how nasty the packaging of things are, and how nasty the general environment about food is, the more inclined you are to try to get to a cleaner and cleaner place with your food habits. Totally understandable. There's a lot of things people really emphasize aside from just eating beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, and a little bit of salt, that can be a blockage for a lot of people. And I'm going to tell you now to mostly ignore all of those things at the beginning. Your best bet when starting a carnivore diet is to just consume mostly ruminant red meat that is culturally appropriate to wherever it is in the world you are, because not everybody has access to beef. So it may be lamb, it may be goat, or some other animal, that ruminant animal. Make sure that it's sufficiently fatty. Add butter or some other animal fat to what you're eating if it is a leaner animal. Like goat tends to be pretty lean in my experience. But get it down to those things, at the very least at the beginning. But there's a lot of other things that people tell you need to worry about. And I'm going to go over a few of those, and I'll give you at least a surface level explanation for why that is, that people focus on all these other things. And my advice to you is make a note of what they say. You're going to probably at some point choose to ignore a lot of the advice that you're about these things anyway, because at the end of the day, we all have to make a decision of how far we are going to go in this. And some people go all the way. So the first of these you're going to hear is microplastics. You're going to hear people say, don't microwave things in plastic containers. Don't eat things packaged in plastic. Good luck with that one. Don't drink bottled water. You can tell I ignore that one. You hear these things, and there's a reason for it. Something like 99% of people, when tested, when they have their blood tested, have microplastics in their blood. It's almost unavoidable. Everything is in plastic, even things that are never heated, like this bottle of water. I have never heated it. There's probably microplastics in it, though. Why? Even though this kind of bottled water specifically is made out of a plastic that is resistant to the natural corrosive nature of water, and you're not going to drink it naturally, there's still probably plastics leaching into it. And it's because not of the plastics itself and not of the water, but because of the transportation. These things are transported in the back of unrefrigerated semi-trucks. This one came from Sam's Club, which is owned by Walmart. I've never worked for Sam's Club, or Walmart, but I've worked for Target, okay? And I've met people who've worked for both, and they say they're identical practically in their basic practice. These items are shipped in the back of trucks that get very, very hot. That heat will cause some of the plastic to degrade a little bit. You might be thinking why I'm saying that and admitting I drink the bottled water, because the microplastic issue is something I'm aware of. I take prudent steps. I try not to microwave anything in plastic. That's such a terrible idea. I try not to, consume anything out of the more dangerous plastic containers, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's nearly impossible to avoid plastic. So I choose where I go. That's one, by the way, the most common one I've seen people in the carnivore and keto space ignore is the microplastics issue. The next one you'll probably hear about is tin foil, aluminum foil if you're one of our friends overseas. The reason you hear people say not to use foil when cooking in the oven is because once cooking above a certain temperature, and I think it's above like 300, 350 degrees, you start getting leaching of the actual chemicals in the metal into your food, and that's not good. I have aluminum for one purpose and one in my house and one purpose only, and that is as a tray liner in my pellet grill, because I cook everything in that thing at temperatures typically below 250 degrees, so it's fine. But even then, it's not coming in contact with food. There's still a metal grate between them, a metal grate that is designed to go much higher temperatures before it becomes a problem. Instead of that, I use parchment paper. It's an easy one to do. But if you don't want to do it at the beginning, if it sounds like too much of a headache, probably fine. Make a note of it though. It is literally the easiest change to make. The next one, grass-fed beef only. This is the big one, a huge one. Is there a nutritional difference between grass-fed beef and conventionally raised feedlot beef? Yes, but it's small. We're talking better fatty acid profile, which we all want, but it's not necessary. There is no real reason to do it unless you're, of course, sensitive to the grains that they get fed, because some people will have problems eating conventionally raised beef when they don't from grass-fed beef. Other people will have problems because of grocery store beef, how it's treated, often meat tenderized, which is not an additive. Yes, I know. I made it sound like an additive in an earlier video. But it's an actual addition to the process of the meat where they puncture tiny holes in the meat, and you can then run the risk of bacteria from the surface of the meat getting into the flesh itself, which causes, for some people, histamine responses. Those people have a good reason to get their grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which costs a lot more money, typically. But it's not something you need to worry about necessarily for most people, at least at the beginning. File it away as something to check into if you're not getting your results that you want. The next you're going to hear is a big controversial one, pork and chicken. Flat out, there are people who respond negatively to pork and chicken, meaning they eat it and it makes them ill. It's because of the fatty acid profile or what the animals are fed. I would be interested in knowing if people who have a history of this problem with pork and chicken tried getting organic pasture-raised chicken or an heirloom heritage breed pig, like Berkshire pork is most easy to find one. You can find that mostly online, but there are several others. I have a different heritage breed pig in my freezer right now. And I'd like to know if you've had that problem with grocery store pork and chicken and seafood too, but once you went to wild caught or some other heritage breed of those animals that were pasture raised and treated properly and fed a proper diet for their species, if you had that problem. For some, there are many carnivores though on the flip side of that who report very candidly that they do quite well eating mostly pork or mostly chicken. And the reason it's not advised to do that for most people is because ruminant animals are much more nutritionally dense in the meat than your pork or your chicken. But if for cost reasons you feel you need to supplement with pork or chicken because it's just cheaper, you'll probably be fine. But listen to your body. And again, when it comes to cost, the carnivore diet is not as expensive as they make it out to be. That having been said, it's still kind of expensive. I mean, let's be real. It is cheaper to go and eat Doritos, as long as you don't factor in your medical costs that come from that kind of thing. I mean, there are a whole bunch of these, though. And the one that I will tell you that from the start you should probably consider is the Redmond's Real Salt thing. We all love Redmond's Real Salt around here, at least in North America. And the general rule should be a sea salt that comes from a land deposit, meaning not from the ocean. And that's because of the mercury content that gets into the actual ocean-based sea salt. Get one from whatever continent you live on. I know Australia's got a great sea salt. I just don't remember the name of it. That comes from the land. As do the Europeans. I mean, every continent has one, has at least one brand. You can find one. They're really, really good. And use that as opposed to like table salt. I have a video that I did where I showed you that table salt, like, you know, the brand with the little girl with the umbrella, whatever that brand is, I can't even remember now. Morton's, that's the one. They had dextrose cutting into their salt as a non-binding agent. Dextrose is sugar, folks. They cut their salt with sugar, all right? And it's not enough to probably cause a problem, but it tells you how bad things are out there when they're cutting the salt with sugar. That's the one I would tell you to worry about if you're going to worry about any of these things, because it's not expensive to take care of. You can get Redmond's Real Salt at a lot of grocery stores. My neighborhood grocery store, which doesn't have a lot of good keto and carnivore-friendly things, has Redmond's Real Salt. They have that. In fact, 2 of the stores in my town have it. In fact, the Walmart in my town does not have Redmond's, I don't think. But 2 of the independently owned grocery stores here do, which is weird, but I take advantage of it. And Redmond's has a whole host of different salts, including smoked salt. Those are great. But it's easy to take care of. You can get it on Amazon. You can buy directly from Redmond's themselves. Whatever way you prefer to do it. I would prefer a non-corporate way of doing it personally, but that's just my own bias talking. That's the easiest one to take care of, that one and the parchment paper. That's where I would start. Beef, butter, bacon, eggs. Get rid of the aluminum foil if you can. Redmond's real salt. What other ones have you heard, though, that people tell you? Eating organ meat every day? I don't. I hardly ever eat organ meat. A lot of people swear by it, though. Eat your meat raw. What other ones have you heard? Let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll have a discussion about that in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help, as does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot, too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for tuning in today.